Hello everyone and welcome to today's webcast, Understanding Neurodiversity and Supporting Consumers in a Technologically Advancing World. My name is Charlene and I'm Head of People at the Chartered Banker Institute, and I'm going to be your chair for today's event. So please note that we're recording today's webcast and it will be available to watch on demand on our website and our YouTube channel afterwards. If you've got any questions at all throughout the session that you would like to ask Andrew, please use the Q&A box on your screen. So I'll just start off with a bit of background on our topic today. According to the National Library of Medicine, approximately 15 to 20% of the world's population lives with some form of a neurodiverse condition. While the world continues to move online, it's thought that up to 20% of consumers have been unable to fully use existing online banking solutions. Such digital limitations can leave some members feeling forgotten and marginalised. And with the need for digital self-service options on the rise, many consumers are selecting financial institution partners based on the digital banking experience that they offer. So today we are pleased to welcome our guest speaker, Andrew Whitehouse. Thank you for being with us today, Andrew.
Pleasure.
Andrew's a neurological diversity specialist. He's taken to the TEDx stage and has published books on neurodiversity. He also provides interventions for professionals, for parents, young people with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, and other related conditions. So it's our pleasure to welcome Andrew, and we look forward to hearing your presentation today.
Thank you very, very much, Charlene. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm just going to bring up my presentation. It looks a lot, but it's not in as much as as much as I just need the slides to remember where I am. So if you want to be my friend, I used to be all over social media, and now I only do Instagram. It's Andrew WSEN, so please do feel free to join me on Instagram. I'm rubbish at it. I do a range of, I provide a range of services. I am a specialist in neurological disorders and ADHD, autism, pathological demand avoidance syndrome, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So I really do look at a lot of things, and I work in schools, colleges, corporate settings, the care sector. So I really do get around a lot. I'm very much a boots on the ground person. So from a qualification point of view, I should be in a university somewhere researching, but that's not my way. I'm very, very much a practitioner, and therefore a lot of the work that we're looking at today is going to be based in experience and practice and things that I've seen and done. So hopefully you'll find that interesting. Not only am I a specialist in this, I'm also a parent of neurodivergent children. 3 of my children are on the spectrum, and I'm also diagnosed with severe ADHD myself, which is kind of interesting. I'll have a few words to say about that. So I'm well and truly immersed in the whole thing. So we've only got 40 minutes. I could keep you here all day and night, but I'm not allowed to. So we're really going to crack in straight away. What I'm going to be talking about is good neurodiverse practice with not just our customers, but also the people we work with. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And then at the end, we're going to do a little bit just about chatbots, which should be fun. So let's look at communication. There is quite an old theory now, but I use it a lot, called extreme male brain theory, that was brought about in the research of Professor Simon Baron-Cohen from the University of Cambridge, who incidentally is Sacha Baron Cohen's uncle and isn't funny. But he's a specialist in autism, and he developed a theory called extreme male brain theory. That is to say that he is saying there are 2 types of brain. This is not to do with gender or sexuality at all. In fact, what he called male brain and and female brain, we now call explicit and empathic brain. But I'm going to use the old terminology just because it's easier to understand. But what Simon Baron-Cohen has said is that all autistic and ADHD people are male-brained. So this is going to be really important for what we're looking at today. So what that systematic brain, or what that autistic ADHD brain needs, is explicit communication. They need to be told exactly what we need to be told, exactly what you want. We don't do implicit. We prefer visual communication. We don't like to talk and listen. And we have single attention as opposed to divided attention when we focus on one thing. So it's really important to know that. I mean, straight away, this has a massive impact on, how we treat our colleagues, how we treat our clients. We don't want to talk about the weather. We if you can show something to somebody rather than talk about it, that would be really helpful. And don't try and communicate when that person is working on something. If you've got someone sitting at a desk working on something, highly unlikely they will talk back to you or process what you're saying. So we really have to sort of get a system of, would you mind stopping? Thank you. Right, let me tell you about it. When we're communicating with people, we have to check for clarity and sense. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this when we get to the AI side of things and the chatbots. But certainly, we don't want that verbal communication. When you're emailing a colleague, or if you're talking to a customer, I try to avoid saying things like, I like your scarf, or when you're emailing them, how are the children, or things like that. These unnecessary frills are going to just detract. And when we apply that to the single attention, you can see, you can see that focusing on one thing. I'm focusing on going into the bank. I don't want to talk about how pretty my scarf is, or how shiny my shoes are, or what have you, or how cute my children are. These are unnecessary frills, and we need to be really, really focused. So when you've got people coming into the bank, you probably won't know. You probably won't know that somebody's autistic, but if you've been working with someone a little while, you probably will, or you'll certainly find out about communicating in different ways. And so we're looking for clarity. We're looking for that. I like phrases like, Malcolm, can you send me that document, please? Or Malcolm, send me that document, please. We don't have to be impolite, and we certainly don't want to overuse words. Do you remember what I said about visuals being more powerful, easier to process? So, not using too many words. There is a saying in autism, after 20 words you just said, I heard the first 3. Or I could sometimes hear a few words at the beginning, the rest became a blur. So short burst instructions, at the counter, in the bank, sign here, please. Try not to rephrase things. If you rephrase something, then what tends to happen is that your client or your colleague is going to think that you're asking them to do something else. So, Malcolm, sit down. Malcolm is not sat down. Malcolm, put your bottle on the chair. That's a separate instruction. So again, using visuals, pictures, images. If you've got a day where you have a timetable, that's absolutely brilliant. If you have, even if it's something like in the canteen, if you're in the canteen, a drawer which says cutlery and a picture of some cutlery is really, really helpful, because that's the sort of thing most neurodivergent people will appreciate, those kinds of instructions. But then the communication's coming back to us. Say what you see. It is. I'm very much an autism advocate on this, and I am very much the person that really feels that when you're working in my field with autistic people, with ADHD people, that you teach them things like, what is not appropriate to say and to people. But not everybody shares that opinion with me. And, you may find yourself in a situation where a customer comes in and says something inappropriate. You have to stop and think about that, and stop and think and say, is this something that I need to deal with? Or is this just a person communicating in the way that they communicate best? And it's very much a case of picking your battles, because it's highly unlikely to be personal. And so, it really is something to consider. Now, when you go into a bank, I've thought about this a lot. When you go into a bank, particularly in the 21st century, 2023, we usually go into a bank because there's something wrong. Now, I've used chatbots a couple of days ago. I had a little play with some chatbots, and they didn't really solve my problems. It can often be easy to get through to banks on the telephone. So sometimes you need to just go in and talk about it. But as I say, it's usually when something's wrong. So, the first thing that you're going to get is anxiety. And from anxiety can come perceived aggression or perceived rudeness, And so, I have had a situation, which I may touch on a little bit later, in a bank where my neurodivergency caused me extreme problems in a bank, very extreme problems. And, and where I was perceived as rude or aggressive, but actually it is anxiety. Now, at the bank end, we need to be focusing on how do we support people who come in who are anxious? How do we support people? Have we got go-to people? Have you got a person that is absolutely brilliant with people? Have you got that person that if somebody comes in shouting, or, if somebody comes in that way, have you got the person that's capable to take them one side and saying, look, let's make a cup of tea and let's talk about this, and I want to fix this for you. We see a lot of signs, which I 100% agree with, in all sort of manner of places. Our staff will not tolerate this, that, and the other, and I completely agree with that. But we also have to remember that anxiety can, the root of the problem is often anxiety. And so with autism, we're looking at communication difficulties, social emotional understanding, rigid thinking. Rigid thinking is that everything needs to be the same. And those sensory differences, which I'm going to really run through with you today. Social situations are often difficult for an autistic person, whereas everybody else, it seems, knows how to do things. So we tend to have expectations. Now, again, you're not likely to know that this is an autistic person coming through your door, walking up to you to talk to you. You're highly unlikely to know that. But what you are likely to know is that they're struggling. And when you find that person struggling, don't try and force an issue. Just step back. Okay, this person just wants to do their business and leave. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, sometimes we become embarrassed and we feel like, oh, okay, I'll make a little joke, or, it's just not going to help. We're really about getting down to business, which is kind of the opposite to what we're sort of told in life about communicating with people. But we really need to do this, to step away. Trying to understand how to behave can be really difficult for autistic people. And so, try to make that in the bank situation as swift as possible. On the phone, as swift as possible. How are you this lovely day? Can I just transfer this money to that account? Yeah, sure. Are you enjoying the sunshine? That person's just made it clear to you that they don't want to have that conversation, and some will, some won't. According to Wen Lawson's a autistic adult, and he says other people are often my biggest problem. And I think when we come to autism, other people can be. It is essentially a social condition, and it is a condition. There's a saying, autistic people just don't want to be your friend. That's not 100% true, but it's not far off. And finding these social skills difficult, you know, can be absolutely bewildering and exhausting. And then you've learned something, and then the context may change. So I've been into the bank 3 times, and I know how to operate in this bank. But in actual fact, what I've got a problem with now is I'm dealing with a different person. Or they've painted the place, or they've changed the opening times. And what we've learned is then not applicable to what we're having to do. So this can be very, very difficult. I'm going to move on from that one. Do you generalize? Do you overgeneralize? I was looking online at, I looked at one particular chain of banks, and I tried to sort of, get an idea of where they were situated. And, although we call them high street banks, they're not always on the high street, for example. Straight away, that's a massive generalization that's not going to work. Have you got clear procedures in place for people with clear responses? Looking at the AI, again, I'm not convinced by the bank that I looked at. Autistic people have an insistence on sameness and an inflexible adherence to routines. This is a problem as well, because, this can be a problem because things really, really do change. We're all familiar with the old adage of, the supermarket's always moving stuff about. But yeah, again, have we a facility that I need to speak to Tim, because Tim is the banker I always work with? Can we do that? Go-to people, we talked about that. That would really seriously help with routines, wouldn't it? This is absolutely huge. Autism and routine is absolutely huge, and it can be the smallest thing. Yeah, can make things really, really difficult. They may have planned in their mind, I'm going to the bank, I'm going to speak with Tim. Tim's going to sort it out because Tim always sorts it out for me. I've arrived at the bank. No, Tim's not here today. He's been moved to our Gloucester branch. And so, this can be very difficult. And then we looked at systems and we said, well, if we've got those systems, then we want to make our neurodivergent, indeed all of our clients, aware that those systems are in place. Yes, you can come in. Well, maybe you can't come in on Wednesday and speak to Tim, but Tim will be in on Thursday. Or can you wait till next week? He's on holiday. So this routine, honestly, it's such a big deal. Depression, anxiety, uncertainty go along with breaks in these routines, and the lack of go along with absolutely being able to have these these. I'm just moving past that last one. These routines, and then we have a sensory situation, background sounds. Now, I've worked in places where the background sounds are the big deal. Outside, outside your bank, is the roadworks going on? Yeah, when you are on the telephone banking, again, the bank I bank with has telephone banking, and we're often given the disclaimer, apologise if there's any noise in the background. I'm working from home today, which is fine. Home is a difficult place to work from, but these sounds for an autistic person can be massively distracting. Not only massively distracting, but can be physically difficult for an autistic person. Not only that, when we looked at what we talked about at the beginning, which was single attention, only being able to concentrate on one thing, then that one thing, yeah, might not be the thing you want to concentrate on. You might be wanting to concentrate on the banking, but actually you're distracted and focusing on the busker outside. I want to talk about colours, autism friendly, safe space. We have banks that are color coded. So, for example, and I'm not picking on anyone in particular, I just happen to sort of know this, you know, I would never have my banking colours as red, because actually in autism, you know, we have lots of colour coding systems for anxiety. Red is always bad. And when we generalise in autism, we will see red things as bad. You know, so there are wristbands that are red on one side, green on the other, and that autistic people can flip them over to red when they're anxious or in crisis. We have systems called zones of regulation, where the red zone is the bad zone, you know, and so colours, you know, can be a massive, massive, big deal. So we want a calm space. We want a really calm space. We want pastel colours. I know you can't do that, but you know, it's important to know what your hotspots are. Is it a calm environment? Does the room smell? Do you smell? If you know, I don't mean BO, but it might be, I suppose. But what I am talking about is things like perfume and aftershave and things like that. Again, can be very distracting. You know, so the autistic friendly lack of smell, if you like, you know, can also be very, very distracting. And this is also with your colleagues. It's also with the people you work with. And, you know, are you distracting that person? Are you making it difficult for them? Are you making it hard to function in that environment? You know, and so therefore, you know, we have other things to ask about those sensory issues. Are you know, is your environment, is it noisy? Well, it should be. I mean, I'm, you know, I'm actually my bedroom. Can you believe? Who knew we were going to start working from our bedrooms? But I am, and this should be running on silent. But when I stop and I close my eyes and I listen, I can hear the pet tortoise scraping about in his cage. He's going to want letting out in a little while. I can hear traffic on the road. I can hear some, I think it's a television humming, etc. What can you hear? Can you do a sensory audit? And can any of those noises be stopped? Can, you know, are you disturbing your clients? Are you disturbing each other? Are you disturbing each other with noises? So we're talking about that divided attention. It's very, very difficult for autistic people. Single attention, one thing, which means inability to separate the senses. You know, so you see somebody having trouble with a cash machine, and they're focusing on the cash machine. Can I help you? And they ignore you. Better to say, excuse me, may I speak? Stop them. Yeah. And if they won't stop, let them carry on. Wait until there's a suitable gap and then speak. Can I help you with this piece of equipment? Yeah. We don't, we also, when we talk about explicit communication, which was the first slide we looked at, explicit communication is basically telling people what to do, not what not to do. Now, again, I had a wander up and down Lincoln looking for this, and I didn't find anything. This is brownie points for every bank I found in Lincoln. You know, there were no signs that said, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. It was great. Yeah. There were lots of signs that said, please take an envelope, please use this, please, you know, please help yourself to a pen, all this kind of stuff. There's loads and loads of that, which was great, because actually in autism, if we say don't do something, that means you don't know what to do. I'll give you an example. This is my coffee cup. Don't put your cup down there means I don't know what to do with my coffee cup. So tell me what to do, not what not to do. Right, moving on to my favorite, which is ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive impulsive disorder. I've added impulsive, and this is because there are 3 kinds of ADHD. There's the combined type, which is the type that I have, inattention, hyperactivity, impulsivity. And then there's ADD, inattention, impulsivity. And then there's hyperactive impulsive. All 3 of these have the word impulsive in them, but the word impulsive is not in ADHD, is it? So actually, we really need to sort of put that in. So I do put that in to help you, because it's impulsive behaviors that cause difficulties. Now, hyperactivity. Hyperactivity is something that happens to us often when we are stressed, whether we be ADHD, autistic, whatever. Hyperactivity is something when we are stressed. And I personally believe when we go into a bank, it's usually because we have to, something's happened. So money is missing from my account. Okay? So money's missing from my account, and so I've gone in to sort it. So I may be pacing. I may be walking up and down. I may be struggling to queue. I might, find it really, really difficult to wait my turn. Combined with impulsivity, I might push in. I might walk past somebody, not particularly necessarily on purpose, but with no idea that there are other people there, and that I've got this massive issue going on, and I'm going to go straight to the front. And it would be very, very easy for this to be sort of escalated, I suppose would be the right word for it. Very easy for this to be escalated. Again, this is a time when somebody's done this, you don't know, are they neurodivergent or what? You really just don't know. To step up and say, can I help you? Can I help you? At this point, that ADHD person, or anyone really, can get agitated and maybe starting to get a little bit verbal. And again, you have to be the one to bring it down. Yeah, you have to be the one to bring that situation down. And again, it's the cup of tea and a biscuit thing, isn't it? So, and again, that would happen in the workplace as well. In the situation, the setting of a workplace. Person gets home from work that night, checks the wages have gone in, they've not gone in, they may struggle to sleep on that, they may get agitated overnight, they might hyperfixate on that thing, come into work the next day, maybe be a bit shouty, and you'd be that person to say, well, sorry, whoever it may be, let's talk about it, let's fix this for you. Because these things are, these things are important. Social media can be very helpful. I've got a few nuggets here, inform and prepare for any changes in routine. If you are having an unexpected meeting on next Wednesday, let them know. Get in touch with people. Use your Twitter, use your Instagram. These are the places, branch Instagram. Gosh, I couldn't find one for my bank. But in actual fact, but the bank I'm currently using most is a totally online bank. But have that up there. I would absolutely have Twitter alerts or Instagram alerts for my local bank just to find out what's going on. When people are there, whether they be staff, whether they be visitors to the bank, consumers, customers, remain supportive, even though those emotions might be too much. Learn to recognize anxiety presentations building up. If you see someone starting to get anxious, starting to get agitated, that's the time to intervene. And if you will, I guarantee you will all have colleague, customer, who you know is going to be perceived as difficult. I'm saying perceived. They're not probably not intending to being difficult. Learn from that, and and modify the way you communicate. Einstein gets accused of all sorts of saying this, that, and the other, but I don't know about this, but I don't know about this, but he's apparently said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and again and expecting different results. Yeah, look at that difficult client comes in, go up to them and say, "Hi, how are you? Can I help today? Is everything okay?" Before that they have, they escalate. So hugely important. And again, for your staff, if you've got that person who really doesn't want to speak in the morning, don't speak to them. It's okay. It's what they want. We have the key to human behaviours. This is fascinating to me. This is autism and ADHD. The first four, social, emotional, communication, rigidity of thought, and sensory, are autism. The second three are attentional issues, impulsivity, hyperactivity. And I just want to take a couple of those and just have a little play with them. When was the last time you didn't understand a request from your line manager? And normally I would sort of talk about this in a sort of communicative workshop. But people say, "Oh yeah, how did you feel?" "I felt stupid. I felt like I should know. I felt daft. I felt unintelligent." Yeah. Well, if somebody communicates with you in a way that you don't understand, you're not stupid, uncommunicative, or daft. It's really you should be able to expect better communication. So thinking about that when you are someone's line manager, yeah, really think hard about how you send that message, how you communicate verbally or in the written form. And if that person doesn't understand, allow them time to ask you about it. When were you last hyperactive? What caused this? Absolutely, anxiety. We used the example of the money missing from the account, or your wages not being paid. This will make you hyperactive, and it will most definitely make the ADHD person hyperactive. Put them in a stressful situation, they will become hyperactive. Autistic people may start to stim and tapping their fingers or fiddling with things or stuff like that. So, we talked about sort of anxiety, but also, relationships. There are people that will come into your bank and will, find it easier to speak to a male or female or any other gender. Yeah. And again, if we can accommodate that, that's hugely useful. Changes to routines. There's a strategy called social stories, which I've worked on and adapted. And I talk about sometimes other people, I will, this is, and basically explaining things like changes to routines is that sometimes other people, I will, this is, what's happening, how it affects you and other people, what you need to do about it, and why. And this is great autism, ADHD communication. They may be in because they have absolutely no interest, and therefore being discommunicative. It may be something's gone at home, or they just don't want to be there. And so we have to, with triggers in autism, we call autism, when autistic people have what's best described as an anxiety attack, we call it a meltdown. Well, ADHD people have meltdowns as well. And with these meltdowns, it could be something triggered 2 days ago. So, it's probably best with your customers, certainly, to rather than try and concentrate what's going on and what's caused this, because you probably won't work it out, it's probably best to just try to make the situation as comfortable as possible. With colleagues, it's maybe better to sort of have some kind of coaching communication with that person to find out what may be bothering them. It's a different scenario, isn't it? Excuse me, Niles, but I have news for you. Copernicus called it. You are not the center of the universe. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's not about you, and we really don't. We don't want to sort of, you know, be pushing towards that sort of blame culture. We just have to deal with this stuff. So it's probably not about you, but hang on, maybe it is about you. Maybe you need to, maybe you need to alter your approach. Maybe you need to alter your approach to, you know, to certain colleagues or certain clients, and communicate in a way. You know, I've just finished working with somebody who I didn't understand a word they said. You know, and this person was responsible for directing clients my way, and so I would get these clients, but the brief to me was, you know, unintelligible gibberish. Well, as far as I'm concerned, other people can communicate. So it might be you, it might not be you. Respond, react. Respond, react. We have a lot of fun with this because I often ask people, what's the best thing to do in a situation, to react or respond? And they always say respond, but actually, you know, that's not always the case, is it? Because actually, you know, sometimes you need to react if someone's about to get hurt or something like that. But usually in a customer-facing industry, we have to respond rather than, we need to think about it. We need to be mindful of the situation we're in, and we need to think about how we're going to communicate with that person. Yeah. Would you like to sit down for 5 minutes? Can I take you somewhere quiet? You know, that kind of thing. Also, though, don't forget, there may be people that really don't want to go somewhere quiet. They would feel threatened by a small environment. So it's very much, would you like, what can I do? How can I help you? Right. So I got online and I had a chat with Sandy. So I shamefully have to admit that a bank account that I no longer use, one of my accounts, turns out to be overdrawn. I've not been paying a lot of attention to it, and it's about £5 overdrawn. So I thought, well, let's have a chat with Sandy here. Hello, why is account 0893 overdrawn? Nice, simple question. And I was expecting an answer like, because your road tax has come out, or, you know, or this has been paid, or that's been paid. The response from Sandy was this: thinking about changing your account, take a look at our business current accounts pages to see what we offer. I was really concerned by this because I thought I'd put in a really clear question. I thought Sandy, the digital assistant, would be looking at my account whilst I spoke in order to try and help me. So we moved on. We took this further. Yeah. Did I answer the question? Well, I didn't click on that one. I thought I've got further questions. How do I freeze the account 0893? So I don't want anything else coming out of that account. Well, the answer came, what would you like to apply for? Current account application, same sort of thing, really. But there's nothing in there that's given that impression. So I took it further again. I thought I'll go into the local branch. What are the opening times of your Lincoln branch? Take a look at our branch ATM locator. On this page, you can book an appointment, check our opening hours, and search for your nearest branch. So I clicked on the branch and ATM locator, and it turns out that my local branch is in the ocean. So we talk about anxiety, and we talk about how this, you know, how these things happen. And, you know, in general, autistic people need, well, to respond better to online things where they don't have to communicate. But it's got to work, hasn't it? It's got to be able to work. Now, I'm not particularly picking on this bank because that just happens to be the bank that I focused on. I don't know. I'd be willing to guess quite a few of them are like that. It'd be good for you to take those same questions, wouldn't it? And go away and check your own bank. An ADHD person like me, we tend not to like this online stuff. We like a conversation. And so if we're offering something like this, we need a telephone call. We need, so we need to know. This has had a massive knock-on effect to the communication and the telephone and the need to telephone somebody, or indeed to walk into a bank, into a branch. So we're going to be watching this again, I hope. Share it with your friends, show your pals. Have a look through. There's been a lot of stuff in there. I really have filled it up. I was fighting to get 8 hours. I got 40 minutes. But, have a little look at this. 5 things you're going to change. Yeah. Don't try and do everything, because it'll overwork yourself. But 5 things you're going to change based on what we've talked about today. And stay in touch. Andrew W. SEN. I would very, very much like to hear from you. So I think we're going to go into some Q&A now, if that's what you'd like. And let's see if we can get some questions up, please.
Andrew, thank you so much for that presentation. It was so interesting, and it's certainly
thank you.
Our audience a lot to think about. So feel free to add some questions to the chat box. But just in the meantime, we have had one question, and that is regarding the AI that banks are able to use to support those with a neurodiverse condition. How can AI support those who need that additional support, and how limited are banks to be able to do this?
Well, you saw my example, and I genuinely was not trying to catch it out. I thought they were very clear questions. I thought, of course, I don't work in banking, but it would be unacceptable to say to me, you're doing it wrong. Because I genuinely, I was playing the game. I didn't go into the branch. I didn't phone anybody up. I engaged with the with the technology.
Yeah.
And I think the first thing is way too general. In fact, it wasn't even vaguely focused on the answers. And there has to be, there has to be some kind of system whereby these things are being monitored, where someone steps in. But I'm also aware, in those circumstances, the technology was clearly not capable of dealing with those 3 simple questions. And so, but I'm also aware that's defeating the object. It's completely defeating the object to have a person monitoring the AI. My only thought is that, to totally restructure that so that it's really genuinely reading what's being typed up. It's, to me, not fit for purpose. From an autism point of view, autistic, as we said, autistic people struggle with generalization skills. I'd sometimes do an activity where I show 3 types of dog, and say to people, how do we know when something's a dog? And nobody knows. But the autistic person can, because they'll say, well, they've all got dog noses, and because they're looking for that common denominator. And within there were no common denominators. Now, I do also use a completely online bank, and one of the more modern online banks. And I've never had an issue to use their online chat. But it does seem to work extremely well, not the online chat, but the way the bank works. So there's clearly facility in there to be able to meet those needs. It's whether I'm going to say it's whether the banks, I was going to say engaging, but not engaging because I wouldn't be here otherwise. It's whether the banks are aware of how difficult those things are. I would say to every bank, every person that works in banking, go and ask them some similar questions. Go on your own bank account. And that was it's not a serious situation. It's that particular bank account within is a bank account I don't use anymore. But sometimes, most of the time, when your bank is overdrawn, that's a serious thing. That one's a bit of a joke to me, but it can be a very serious thing.
Yeah, and I think it leads on to the next question that we've had, Andrew, about, can you share any success stories or examples of organisations that have successfully implemented strategies to support neurodiverse consumers?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, multiple situations. I did some work for a chain of coffee shops, and they one of the first things they took on, one of the first things they worked out was a lot of their staff were dyslexic, and therefore they were finding they were getting people who were very physically drawn towards that kind of work. Yeah. Along with dyslexia, you often have traits of ADHD as well. Mm-hmm. But of course, there were issues with communication. So they put in a system of really clear visual labeling that didn't use written word. And I don't get statistics of how that's improved productivity, but the feedback was, this is really improved productivity. We don't hear that. I also worked. I did some work for a company that provided driving tests, taxi driving tests. And again, the clientele, there was a lot of ADHD clientele who were, like to be out and about, driving a car, meeting 20, 30 new people in a day. It couldn't be more ADHD, but the problem was getting them through those tests. And what they did is they broke those tests down into, I think it was a 2-hour test, into 6 20-minute sessions throughout a day, to allow those people to regather their concentration skills and to be able to, to access that test on a level playing field. It's funny because I was going to talk a little bit about the Equality Act and how, that's a legal requirement. But I think in the workplace such as yours, it's very much a matter, if it were me, I'd want to come in and have a look. I'd want to come in and see and say, well, we could do this, we could do that, we could do the other. I think, I think I was approached. I have worked in the last couple of years for one of the high street banks, mm-hmm. and they very, very much took on board the advice that I gave at the time. And I think it's very much about working with neurodivergent professionals.
Okay. And another question we've had, which I find quite interesting, how can individuals without neurodiverse experiences become better allies and advocates for neurodiversity? How can they support more?
Use your eyes, use your ears, and use your initiative. I did a lot of stuff there, which I was talking about. That person looks like they don't want to have a joke. Don't have a joke with them. Of course, what I didn't say was, if the ADHD people, all stand-up comics have got ADHD. That's a fact. If the ADHD people want to chat with you, chat back. If they're not, if they don't want to communicate, then don't have that communication. It's not personal. We had that picture, didn't we? It's not you, it is you. Yeah. And the two pictures. And I think it's about reading the signs. It's about reading the signs. And do you know what? What's really fascinating is that last 40 minutes had nothing to do with neurodiversity, really. It was about humanity, because we all got our funny ways. That thing about being anxious. Yeah. We all get anxious, Mrs. Whitehouse starts pacing about and bothered, and I'm the one with ADHD, she's not, but when something she can't, she has to focus on this thing, and it might cause her to be hyperactive. Read the signs, look at what's right in front of you, because if you, especially in a customer facing industry such as yours, and the same behind the scenes to your colleagues, absolutely the same behind. Someone comes in grumpy every morning. Don't play the game of let's see who can make him speak. Let that person come in that way, and be easygoing with it.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I think the next question is something that a lot of people worry about. And this is, I'll read out the question here. I'm worried that I may be using the wrong terminology when talking with colleagues about neurodiversity. How do I know what the right thing to say is? I don't want to offend anyone.
Right, let's start with neurodiversity then, shall we? So I've used the word neurodiversity incorrectly probably 50 times in this last hour. Everybody, every human being is neurodiverse. The correct terminology straight away is neurodivergence. Okay. We don't have people with autism. We have autistic people.
Okay.
Now, the trouble with that is, nobody sends you an email to say, dear Andrew, as of Monday, we're going to call autistic people, not people with autism anymore. Nobody will send that out to you. Autistic people that don't speak, when I started working in the industry, they were called non-verbal. Then it was chooses not to speak. Now it's pre-verbal, and there were probably ones in between that I missed. We don't have symptoms. We don't have suffer from. I had a person yesterday who claimed to be an ADHD advocate, talked about suffers from, symptoms, and person with ADHD in one paragraph. And and it is difficult. I did some work for the British Academy of Audiology, and although I'm a hearing aid user and I have hearing loss, my first question was to the president of the BAA, that's all well and good, Claire, but what do I call them? Yeah, what do I call what do people who can't hear like to be called? And she said hearing loss. Ask that question.
Okay.
Ask that, what do you like to be referred to? But I've also got a little helpful thing for you. On the National Autistic Society website, there is a page of acceptable and unacceptable terminology.
Well, that's helpful.
Yeah, and it's a really good, there's a lot of it. There's a heck of a lot of it, but it's very, very good. So,
okay.
yeah.
Thank you. Andrew, thank you so much for today. It's been such an interesting discussion and really relevant as well. We're so grateful for you taking the time to do this. If our audience who are watching would like to watch any of this back at any time or share it amongst colleagues or friends, it will be available on our website and our YouTube channel very, very shortly after this. And if you would like Andrew's details for your own organisation, or you'd just like to learn more about any of this, we will include Andrew's details in the email to you all afterwards. So thank you all again for joining today, and thank you once again to Andrew for your insight, and have a lovely rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.